the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And in this episode, we're going to dig in deep to the real case that the state has lined up against Bryan Kohberger and the strategy of the defense that they will be presenting to counteract that case. Now, we know through much investigating that this case is the biggest bunch of BS that we've ever seen. Maybe now with the Meister case, maybe it's the second bunch of BS. But regardless, we've got to clearly understand what the stakes are in this thing and what is real and what isn't real based on the court record. So it's funny though, before we dive into the actual case against Bryan Kohberger, because I'm going to clearly lay it out and I'm going to clearly lay out the defense and where this thing is going to hinge. And before I do that, though, we've got to address the elephant in the room right now because it's gotten significantly more volatile since those affidavits from Cy Ray posted to the court docs. It sent the guilters into a frenzy. I mean, they went from jumping up and down and doing cartwheels over Amazon clicks and a balaclava purchase to literally losing their minds. And when I say literally, I mean literally. I mean, it's taken some of them that have the ability or had the ability to, critically think, and it's making them go through and try to say things that are just unbelievably moronic. But I think it's kind of funny because I seen, Harsh to a video yesterday. It was titled something about FFS. Well, FFS, who that is, that's Vivian. That's the troll that I created. And apparently, she's trolling everybody now with the same old terrible arguments that, that they've always made. And I've come to the conclusion, I don't know where they got it. I don't know if it's contagious or what, but they have a terminal case of GDS, and that is guilter derangement syndrome. And once they have a full-blown case of GDS, it makes them just say and do the most unbelievably erratic things. I mean, it's perplexing to me. And I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't point out a couple of examples of these things. And I'm not trying to be mean to anybody or demean anybody, but we are going to go through a couple of examples of what GDS has done to some of these people and point out the ludicrousy of the things that they're trying to present to you as fact. So, it might be helpful if you happen to be, watching one of their lives and you want to ask a question that is an actual relevant question that they should be able to answer. And maybe this will give you a chance to, maybe formulate a few of those questions for them. But we're going to take a look at a couple of examples here, and I'm going to show you what I mean by once full-blown guilter derangement syndrome sets in, how irrational the arguments become. It's amazing to me. Check this out.
Going between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Probably not much. And, let's look at what that looks like. This is 100 meter from the victim's home. There ain't no shopping here, guys. 100 meter radius. You're looking at Taylor Ave and basically the apartment complex next door, the apartment parking area right behind the victim's residence. That's about it of where you can actually park and actually stop. 23 times between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m.
Man, Daniel, you're right. Brother, that's some damaging evidence right there to Bryan Kohberger. 23 times they had him within 100 meters of the King Road residence, huh? There isn't any shopping around there. You're right about that. Well, I think, you know what? I think you got him. But wait, you sure you're reading that right, man? Is that what that actually says? It says they had Kohberger within 100 meters 23 times between 10 and 4 a.m.? Are you reading the defense's disclosure? Man, it'd be kind of odd to think the defense would disclose something like that and just wreck their own case, wouldn't it? Maybe we need to take a closer look at what those docs you're reading actually says. Let's look. Okay, so here's the doc that he's reading out of, and this is from the defense. Strange. It says the state has not disclosed an analysis or where Special Agent Balance will claim the phone was located. These are the 7 critical minutes that contain exculpatory evidence. Oh, wait a minute. The 7 critical minutes, well, I believe that's referring to when Kohberger left his apartment, not his trips to Moscow like you have represented here with this 100-meter radius map. So, okay, so you're actually confusing 2 separate events here as you read this. Well, that's understandable. But what does it actually say? Page 28 shows a map that includes 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, represented by the CS icon and a yellow circle that represents a 100-meter radius around the crime scene. Balance will explain that he conducted analysis of all cell sites in the area that provided coverage to the crime scene and identified any cell sites that drive test data showed coverage that included this 100-meter radius around the crime scene. Oh, wait a minute. So what he did was conduct analysis of the cell sites in the area. So he got all those cell sites in the area, and then he picked out any of the ones that provided coverage to a 100-meter radius around the King Road residence. So if the cell site right here provides coverage, say, to right here, well, then he would have included that cell site because it was providing coverage to this 100-meter radius around the King Road residence. He's not actually putting Bryan Kohberger's vehicle in any of this 100-meter radius. He's just going to try to put his vehicle in the cell that's covering part of this 100-meter radius, which means if that cell also covers, let's say, Walmart or Marshall's, then he would put him right here as well. So that's not what he's saying. But then again, they're not even talking about this. They're talking about those 7 critical minutes over in Pullman. So using this for that is kind of disingenuous or just a bad reading of the documentation. But let's go to what you're referring to here. The state has not disclosed this analysis. They have not disclosed this analysis. Yeah, they've not on each one or where. So there's nothing have they disclosed about where suspect vehicle or Bryan Kohberger's phone has to do with this 100-meter radius right here. Wow. Pages 29 and 30 represent any time that the 8458 phone utilized a cell site identified as part of page 28 between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Wait a minute, let's read that again. Page 29 and 30 represent any time the 8458 phone utilized a cell site identified between the hours of 10 and 4 a.m. 23 separate instances between July 9th and November 7th. Balance will testify that the 8458 phone used cell sites consistent with being at the crime scene during these dates and times. Balance will further testify that the hours between 10 and 4 were identified by the investigative team as times of interest. So once again, Balance will say that the phone used cell sites consistent with being at the crime scene. So not the 100-meter radius, cell sites that provide coverage that includes this 100-meter radius. They're going to say his phone was anywhere where that cell site provided coverage. Again, nothing to do with this 100-meter radius. You need to look closer at the docs, but I know you don't want to do that because you would rather paint this picture to the public and call it a real analysis simply because, unfortunately, you've contracted guilt or derangement syndrome there, guy. But good try. Keep on trying. Keep on keeping on, because that's what y'all do. So just so everybody knows what the document is actually saying is the FBI made a 100-meter radius around the King Road residence, and they did that so that could be their margin area for the cell site coverage. So for example, this says this represents a 100-meter radius right here around the King Road residence. Instead of having just the little tiny residence, they did a 100-meter radius. Now, if this is a cell site in Moscow and its coverage area comes out like this, because that's how cell site coverage areas typically work in a cone, well, then you could see that this coverage area would intersect this corner of this 100-meter radius. So this would be consistent with what they're saying, that the cell site coverage area catches a piece of that 100-meter radius around the King Road residence. So based on that, if, say, Bryan Kohberger was right here, then it would be consistent with being in the coverage area of the 100-meter radius that the cell service covers. Not that he's in a 100-meter radius of the dadgum King Road residence. Man, get it right or take some medication for your GDS. Now, in all fairness to him, that was possibly just a misreading of the documents. But again, in his defense, at least he is very consistent. I mean, he was one of the first people to ever show symptoms of GDS. So it's been with him for a long time. What is more comical is the people that have just contracted GDS. I mean, they went from being respected and really breaking down some things and trying to make sense of them to coming up with deranged arguments that are clear signs of guilt or derangement syndrome. Nothing else could make somebody just go completely off their rocker other than GDS that fast. Let me show you. It's very interesting.
Of Nevada Street and Stadium Way on the Washington State University campus. I mapped out this route and it fits like a glove. And here it is. I've showed this before, but this fits like a glove. Here it is, okay? 33 minutes. 787 Indian Hills Drive at 3:26 a.m. Starting here at 2:53 a.m. Take the cell phone out of it, but I will describe, even if you were to put Cy Ray's cell phone analysis into it, would still be the same difference. Now remember, they're using this to describe movements related to suspect vehicle 1, which is indeed a 2014 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra on the WSU campus at the intersection of Nevada and Stadium Way. Okay, 2:53 a.m. per the probable cause affidavit is the last sighting of the vehicle.
Man, you see that? I mean, he just threw the state's entire case out the window and just made up his own case. Here's the route that it went, contradicting every single thing the state has put out here in the last couple of weeks. Let me show you. Okay, so here's his map of his proposed route of travel of suspect vehicle 1 now that he's contracted GDS, and he just knows it's Bryan Kohberger overnight for some reason. But you'll notice his route of travel here doesn't go anywhere near Highway 270 past Floyd's cannabis shop. And we know that in the state's last self-authenticating record filing, it clearly states Floyd's cannabis surveillance video for November 13th. The state may rely on video footage from November 13th, 2022 at around 3:02 a.m., showing a white sedan on State Route 270 between Pullman, Washington and Moscow, Idaho, approximately 1 hour before the homicides. The state is in the process of obtaining a certificate of authenticity. So if this is suspect vehicle 1, according to the state, well, then how is this the route of travel you're proposing for Kohberger's car? And if that's not Kohberger's car right here, then that means there's another vehicle matching suspect vehicle 1 that is caught on camera at Floyd's cannabis shop. And that would be more likely the suspect vehicle 1 later seen in the King Road neighborhood, because this is the camera the state is pointing to be suspect vehicle 1. But that's not all. You see, he starts out his path of travel here at Northeast Nevada Street and Stadium Way at 2:53 a.m. Yet, if that is, in fact, Bryan Kohberger's car at Northeast Stadium Way and Nevada Street caught on camera, then how do you explain this? Washington State University video surveillance for November 13th, 2022. The state may rely on video footage from approximately 5:28 a.m. to 5:30 a.m., showing the suspect vehicle after the homicides in Pullman, Washington. Whoa, wait a minute. How come they are not trying to say approximately 5:28 to 5:30 and 2:44 and 2:53, as you're stating per the PCA that they caught his vehicle here? Oh, but it appears that the state has abandoned the identification of the vehicle right here because they don't want to rely on that video anymore. So why would they do that? Because real simple, that's not Bryan Kohberger's car caught on video where you're saying it is. It is more than likely the same car that they catch at Floyd Cannabis Shop. And when you look at the judge's ruling, he says that according to the pen register affidavit, CSLI data shows defendant's cell phone left his apartment at approximately 2:45 a.m. So if he left his apartment here at 2:45, and this is his vehicle down here at 2:53 that you're suggesting, well, then he would have been caught on all those cameras, especially the Nevada Street camera. But the state's no longer relying on that. They just want 5:28 to 5:30, meaning these 4 cameras catching him coming back in. They don't even want the 5:27 shot of him coming through, because then that would put focus on what you're talking about, the 2:53 camera. So obviously Bryan Kohberger didn't go this way, which means Bryan Kohberger went this way. And the CSLI data and the time in advance data will prove that, no matter how much you want Cy-Ray to be wrong and Kohberger to be guilty, because these are the kinds of arguments you come up with when you have guilt or derangement syndrome. You ignore facts. Explain those facts there, Guilter. Oh, but it gets worse. Watch how they freak out and develop a stutter when what they're trying to prove actually proves against what they're trying to prove. Kind of funny.
You know, you've got this that just doesn't seem to be fitting. So, and then if she makes it fit up front, which it fits perfectly, for some reason the backside's out of whack. Keep in mind, this camera on the 1125 Ridge Road camera is up high. It's up on the second story.
See how he freaked out when he put his little program on the windows and it didn't fit? What did he do then? Just like people with GDS do, they freak out. And he starts saying, now keep in mind, the camera is on the second story, and tries to come up with reasons to make something that doesn't fit. But you would never convince somebody with GDS that they're wrong, so you'll be futile in your efforts to tell him he's wrong about his vehicle identification. But he could answer this question, though, because that identification was made off of one camera on Ridge Road, and according to the FBI report, that vehicle did something strange. How does he answer this with GDS? Again, according to the exhaustive FBI report, the vehicle that they are trying to incorrectly identify is right here on Ridge Road, captured by this camera. And once it's captured by this camera heading this way, according to the FBI report, a vehicle matching the description of Vehicle 1 turns eastbound on Lauder and then onto southbound Ridge Road. So there it is. But then it's not seen again until 404, where its headlights are seen traveling north on Walenta. Well, have him explain how this vehicle turned past this camera, but didn't get caught on this camera coming around that caught every other vehicle on that camera, and then didn't get caught on the same camera going back out, and there's no other way out of this little area. So regardless of what this vehicle is, it's obviously not the one that entered the King Road residence, because it went into a black hole right here and didn't come out. But I bet you they won't try to explain that one. See, the problem they have is when GDS takes full effect of their mind, instead of sticking to what they should stick to, which is DNA on the knife sheath, they then believe that they can explain every aspect. And in doing so, they just come up with laughable analysis of the circumstances. But if you ever want to ask them a few questions, I gave them a few there that I bet you they won't touch with a 10-foot pole. But putting that to the side, I mean, GDS it's a terrible thing to have. And once you get it, I mean, I don't know that there's a cure. So we'll just, keep them in our prayers. Now, let's go to the real case against Bryan Kohberger. I'm going to show you all the evidence that the prosecution is going to try to use to convict Bryan Kohberger. I'm going to show you the difference between real evidence and what they're trying to imply as evidence. And then we'll look at the defense's case, show you what the defense needs to do and what they're planning on doing, I assure you. And then I'll show you how it actually eliminates everything in the state's case. And it all comes down to one big factor. And that is why those timing advance reports are actually that important in this case. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, what I've developed here is a funnel. And this funnel contains the most to, I believe, the least compelling evidence that they have in the case against Bryan Kohberger. But after going through all of the court docs, you can bet this is going to be the case that they're going to try to present to the jury to convict Bryan Kohberger. Starting up here at the top, with things that are really not evidence at all, they are going to point to the fact that Kohberger's phone was not reporting to the network during the time of the atrocity. They're going to point to the fact that he does not have a solid alibi during the time of the atrocity, and the fact that he was out during the time of the atrocity driving around and not having an alibi. So that's going to be just strictly circumstantial things that they're going to use to try to paint a picture. Then they will move on to more sinister things, such as BK's turn paper on crime scenes that he submitted for a grade on a homework assignment back in 2020. They're going to point to the Reddit survey that he conducted on behalf of his studies to criminals on, their behavior during crimes. And they're going to go through any Google search that he's ever done in the last 5 or 10 years, and God forbid a criminology student, search something depraved, they're going to paint the picture that he is a depraved Google searcher. And that's going to add to their circumstantial evidence in the case. Then they're going to point to a purchase a year before of a balaclava to try to insinuate that he had purchased items that one of the witnesses at the scene described the assailant in. They're going to point to a Dickies tag that he perhaps purchased a black Dickies shirt or a Dickies outfit. And then they're going to go to Amazon click activity, insinuating that he at some point purchased a K-bar knife, which would be similar to the knife sheath found at the crime scene. Now, still not evidence, but it will start to paint a pretty strong circumstantial picture in the mind of the jury. But then they're going to go to the CSLI data on Kohberger's phone location. They'll focus on 2 different times. One on, that should be November the 12th and 13th. But they're going to focus on his time and where he was at before the crime and where his phone was at after the crime, and they're going to try to put him in places they want to put him in. And then they're going to go to the 23 previous trips to Moscow, and they're going to plug his phone in on a map and try to insinuate that he was surveilling the property. Again, not real evidence of a crime, but painting this big circumstantial picture of the crime. Then they're going to go to the video of the suspect vehicles that they've put together to try to insinuate Kohberger's proximity to the area of the crime. So by doing this, they're going to insinuate he possessed all the items that were necessary to commit it. He was out and about. They're trying to put him in the area. They're trying to put him in the proximity with the vehicle sightings. And this is what they're trying to insinuate is motive. And this is more circumstantial evidence that just shows that it's a possibility. Then they're going to produce their witness that says she's seen somebody resembling the description of the defendant wearing a balaclava in the residence. They're going to produce a DoorDash driver saying that they seen a car that was consistent with suspect vehicle 1 circling the house. And then their final piece of actual evidence is going to be the DNA on the knife sheath found at the residence. This is the state's entire case right here, y'all. And it paints a big circumstantial picture of Bryan Kohberger being guilty of this crime. And the key pieces to this, though, of course, is the DNA on the knife sheath. But because the knife sheath is a movable object and DNA is indirectly transferred to movable objects, the key to them actually putting Kohberger as the assailant is going to be the CSLI data and the identification of the suspect vehicle. Because if they don't have any evidence putting him in the proximity of the residence, then it can easily be explained away by a movable object having his DNA on it. So that is the state's case. We gotta be ready for it because this is what they will be presenting. Now, the defense's case is a little bit different, and it's going to look simpler, but it's really not. It's really much detail. So here's the defense's case. Very simple. It starts down here again with the knife sheath and the DNA. They're going to argue that it is transferable DNA on a knife sheath that somebody else placed at the scene. They're going to argue that suspect vehicle 1 was not Bryan Kohberger's car caught on camera. They're going to have a counter argument on the CSLI data. But instead of focusing on disputing the DNA on the knife sheath, they are going to focus on crime scene analysis. And as I will bring to you in a future video, they have alluded to in 2 different places in these court docs that their crime scene analysis will show that there is no way one person could have committed the crime, and it is a multiple perpetrator crime. And that is something that they are going to hit hard. And then, obviously, they're going to focus in on the actual motive for the crime as it relates to the alternative perpetrators that they will produce. And that is where the state's case is non-existent with motive. So the defense will focus on motive with their alternate perpetrators, focus on the crime scene itself and the reality that one person couldn't have done it. And then the whole case will come down to the CSLI data coinciding with the suspect vehicle 1. So here is going to be the entire case, because if you take out suspect vehicle 1 being Bryan Kohberger's car, and you do that in accordance with the CSLI data backing up what you're saying, then that takes Kohberger out of the proximity of the King Road residence and leaves them with a movable object with DNA on it, and that's not going to be enough for them. So it's all going to come down to this right here. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is the defense's case. Bryan Kohberger left his apartment at 2:45, did not go east towards Moscow, but went west towards Wawawe Park, and his phone stopped reporting to the network at 2:54, right here coincidentally where the Pullman coverage of its cell towers would actually end. So the perfect moment where the cell towers end, that's when his phone stops reporting to the network. When these people say that they have proof that he turned his phone off or shut it down, they are absolutely lying. Now, the state's case is the vehicle didn't go that way. It went this way, but now they're hiding the cameras they're saying is Kohberger's car on WSU, which is your first indication that they are lying. But they're also trying to say that that's his car right here at Floyd Cannabis Shop. And if that's not his car, then that's not his car. So the timing advance data would prove this, and that's why this 7 minutes is so important. And this is going to be the entire case right here. Did Kohberger go this way and go out of the network, and that's why his phone stopped reporting? Or was this Kohberger's car caught on Floyd Cannabis Shop, therefore it's suspect vehicle 1, therefore they got him in the proximity? That is going to be the entire case, y'all. But when you look at the evidence against Bryan Kohberger, this is what you really are looking at. Because if you take out the vehicle, the surveillance, this is all cast in vehicle identification. So if the defense wins this battle, this is immaterial, because if he's not in the area, it doesn't matter if he bought a balaclava. It doesn't matter if he bought anything from Dickies. It doesn't matter if he ever purchased a K-bar knife. Depraved Google searches don't matter. It's not evidence. None of this stuff is evidence. It's all just circumstantial evidence. If they can't put him in the proximity of the crime, none of this matters. The witness identification, she did not witness Bryan Kohberger, just somebody that resembled his features. The DoorDash driver is not going to be able to identify Bryan Kohberger or his car, just a suspect vehicle car that resembled it. And the DNA on the knife sheath is a transferable object, and that DNA could have got there indirectly. So it all comes down to the CSLI data and vehicle identification. And it really all comes down to this 7 minutes right here, because if this is Kohberger going this way It can't be his car here. Therefore, he's not suspect vehicle 1. Therefore, he is not the assailant. That is the case. But there you have it. So, in conclusion, guilt or derangement syndrome, let's hope it's not contagious and, people can't just contract that from commenting on other people's videos. But what I'm going to do, that's going to be the only video I've got for you today, folks. I got quite a bit of stuff that I got to take care of, and I'll have you another one out tomorrow. And I just want to thank everybody again for all their wonderful comments. And please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti's out.